Welcome in, guys. Today, as I mentioned, I just literally used the phone to take a picture for the thumbnail for this live video. This is what I'm working on, okay? I don't know about you, this video looks like it's a mirror image. Is that the case for you guys watching this afterwards? Anyway, this cash pocket, card pockets, internal pockets on the inside here. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And this is a completely turned edge wallet, which means I've, from the outside, turned this alligator leather over onto the inside here. This hasn't been trimmed. This isn't the final length. This will be trimmed post stitching. So now we're stitching in, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So this is a live video of me stitching this in. We'll see if anybody comes in, has a bit of a conversation. Apologies, guys. I'm kind of on the tail end of a cold. So if I sniff or occasionally cough, I apologize, but I sound a bit rough. It's basically, feel a bit rough too. We'll get there. No one cares. So let's get these. So I got a long piece of thread because I'm going all the way from one side to the other. If I can pick that up. I don't know about you, but whenever I've trimmed my fingernails, I find it really difficult to pick needles up off a desk. Leathercraft problems, eh? All right. I'll get this tangled up now. I've got an arm span and a half of thread. Make sure I get it on the right side. I'm going through quite a few layers of leather here, so I am using a saddler's awl, a leather stitching awl. And I've gone with a black alligator on the outside, and then going with black thread as well. Kind of the turned edge wallet aspect of it, which is, you know, kind of cool. It's showcasing a little bit more skill than just edge paint or burnishing, in my mind anyway. And we've also got two different kind of types of leather, one exotic, one non-exotic. And they've all got their kind of call for attention. So I feel that a contrast thread, especially on something like this, would just make the whole thing a little bit busy and distract from the main event, which is a turned edge technique of the turned edge. So there's no burnishing on this. There's no edge paint on anything. No edges have been finished in any way other than allowing the leather to turn over on itself. A good thing for us, you can't catch a cold from a live stream. Well, I don't know. That might change. Imagine if you could. That would suck. Yeah, the next technology is scratch and sniff live videos. That would be show my age now. Remember scratch and sniff in the magazines? You'd see an advert for something, some kind of fragrance, air freshener or a perfume or whatever, and you literally just use your nail to scratch a certain area and you can smell what they're trying to sell. Imagine there was a video version, it would just smell like leather in here. Probably leather and wood. Robert says, hello, I am finally able to catch this live. Yes, welcome in. Welcome, Robert. So I just realized I'm actually stitching with a needle that somehow I've bent. Looks like a crooked finger. I don't think it would be a problem. It is difficult seeing the little prick marks, though, in heavily textured black leather. Kind of have to just get a sense of it after a while. Hope everyone's doing well and they're not suffering with an annoying cold like myself. So a little slow first of all, because I've got so much thread, kind of have to pull it through in two sections. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm actually going to use this one. Most of the projects that I create either get given to people or I keep them in storage most of the time. You know, a few handbags and things like that. It's nice to actually get them used, but I don't sell my work anymore. But yeah, instead of putting this in storage or giving it away, I'm actually going to use this one. I kind of like it. I mean, I don't make products with myself in mind. It's more to do with what people are requesting and what I think will be good for the student. But occasionally, I do end up like the de Havilland travel bag. I definitely use that one. Love that bag. Connor says it's called smell-o-vision. Yeah, National Geographic did a scratch and sniffs to do a huge survey on scent and sensory perception. That's interesting, isn't it? Let's move that up. I think the main thing is I don't know how many people buy magazines anymore. But smell-o-vision would be cool, wouldn't it? Just don't watch any documentaries about farms or cheese factories or fish markets. Yeah, if anyone has any leathercraft-based questions, feel free to chime in. Questions about this or any other leathercraft topics. I'll be here for a short little while. Excuse me. So I've gone with quite a fine thread on this. Stitch spacing is 2.7 millimeters, which is kind of a good standard for wallets, really. 2.7. It's not unrealistically thin, and you're not going to be tearing through thin parts if you add too much tension to it. But it's a good compromise between strength and finesse, I feel. Three millimeters, still very good. 3.38 starts to look a little chunky. I mean, you can always use thinner thread with a bigger stitch spacing, but it still doesn't quite have that look. Oh, I can just about pull that tight with an arm span now. So coming up to the first corner. Connor says, how do you determine what size pricking irons to use for a project? There's no hard and fast rule, really. It's mostly just what I think is going to look good. I usually take some scrap leather of whatever I'm using, and I will try different pricking iron sizes and different colors of thread and different thicknesses of thread to kind of arrive at the stitch spacing that I want, thickness of thread that I want, and the color combination or lack of combination if it's the same color beforehand. So I usually kind of test it all out and then look at it objectively with the design and think, what do I think will fit into this? Is there a method to it? Not really. It's mostly my personal preference and experience with what's worked in the past. For things like wallets and watch straps, the standard sizes that work a little bit better are 2.7 and 3mm. Clutches, long wallets to kind of small bags, that area, 3.38, another standard prick and iron size that works quite well with that. And then moving on to larger bags, 3.85, or if you can get them 4mm pricking irons, I think are good for that. So if you're doing a large bag or a hold all or something like that, then the larger ones. But you can kind of, if you're going for a specific look and you want the stitching to stand out a little bit more, you can use a larger pricking iron on a smaller item. But you must use caution if you're creating a larger item with a small pricking iron. You have to kind of think, you know, is this going to be strong enough? You have to think about reinforcements and stress areas. For example, handles on a bag. If you're using 2.7, as you stitch in, it's, you know, the tension that you're going to need, you can start cutting into the leather. So you think about it practically most of the time, but for me, I go by what feels about right. All right, last one into the corner, and then I can turn this. And for those just chiming in, I'll give you a slightly closer look. Excuse me. I was thinking I should cover my mouth, but then again, it's just me in here. I can cough it into the camera. It's just fine. So yeah, so this is what we're working with at the moment. So these haven't been trimmed, so they still need trimming post stitching, and we'll be doing that in a way where we can cut through it, but without cutting into the leather on the other side. So where have we stitched? So this is the one at the moment. On the other side is literally plain alligator. Okay, so one cash pocket in here, and we have enough room for 1, 2, 3, 4 cards on each side, not including the one on the back. I won't put my finger in too far because it's only a glue line that's holding it at the moment. So yeah, so that's what we're working with. And I'm going to open these English settlers climbs up a little bit more. And there we go. So now, crossed over the corner, and there's a divide where I've actually cut and trimmed them to size. Excuse me. So there's a 45-degree cut on each side, and I've arranged it so that the last prick mark and the first prick mark of each seam length leaves a little bit of a gap for the thread to go across that cut line, if you know what I mean. And that just reinforces it and keeps it down. Just want to make sure that we don't add too much tension on the thread to cut through it. Excuse me. Atolus leather, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. When you make a bespoke order or something new, are you charging the person for the design beforehand or money in advance? What if a customer asks for something and when you make it, he doesn't want it? Yeah, I would. I would never. I mean, I don't make to order anymore. 100% what I do is teaching leathercraft to people. But I would never essentially work for free and then hope that they pay me before I send it. That's not something that I would recommend that you do. I would always charge 100% upfront. before starting work. Some people for large orders will take a deposit. I'm not a huge fan of that because people can still get out of it, but they don't like the fact that you've got half their money kind of thing. So that can cause problems in and of itself. So yeah, I always take 100% upfront. If they don't, if you're accepting half the money up front, I don't know. It's just, you're saying, that you're not. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they trust you to give you the full amount. If they don't trust you, or they can't afford the full amount at the time, it's not the customer that you really want. So each to their own. It's just the way I viewed it. I've always gone with, this is going to cost X amount. You pay that, then I make it, then I send it to you. And most of the time, for when people pick it up, or if they're having it made and I'm sending it to them, I don't send them images of the build along process or anything like that. I mean, they might see a little bit if they follow me on Instagram or something, but so they don't really get an opportunity to say, no, actually, I don't want it. It gets sent to them. So you got to do what works for you. You can try all different ways, but if you start making products and then go, oh, this is what it looks like, I'm going to send it to you now, do you want to send me through the money? You're not going to be doing it for long, put it that way. We're all customers at the end of the day, in some way. We're all customers. But sometimes customers can be very difficult when you've spent all that time and effort and money making something, and then they change their minds, because it could be several weeks from them. And if it's been a bit of a, what's the phrase now? Impulse buy or something like that, and then they change their mind. They don't have to. They don't legally have to pay for it. And the rules might be different in your country, but yeah, not advisable. But I think your question included: are you charging the person for the design beforehand or money? I think that's what you meant by that. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Going to move this up a little bit more. We done? Yep. Joe B says, hi Phil, bifold is looking stunning. Thank you very much. For pricky lines in your mind, how much does the tooth width matter? Would you want a wider tooth when casting on with a thicker thread? Yeah, 100%. But it really depends, because if the pricking iron has a 1 millimeter width tooth, if I'm pushing through a 2.5 millimeter awl, it then becomes 2.5 millimeters. So if you're using an awl, it really doesn't make a lot of difference. You can get the world's cheapest pricking irons. All you're doing is making a mark and having an accurate stitch spacing for you to then go through with an awl and finish it off. And it really doesn't matter. Quality of a pricking iron matters a lot more if you don't use an awl. That's my opinion. And when I say quality, I'm talking, cost and ultra smooth prongs and special steel prongs that don't break when you smash them through 6 millimeters of leather, kind of thing. So yeah, if you're not planning on using an awl, then yeah, prong width matters. If I'm using, let's have a look. Just give me 1 second. We've got an example here. Yeah. Okay, so these are the 4Z irons. These are actually reversible prongs on there. Very thin, 440C prongs. Very, very strong, quite brittle, so you'd be careful, but they're replaceable, and this comes with spares in the pack and blah, blah, blah. I'm not selling them. But the idea is this is a 3.38 millimeter pricking iron. Prong width. Let's see, Mita Toyo. 1.75 millimeters. So it's quite thin. Let's look at these. I can't remember where I got this from. China, likely. These kind of remind me of Dixon pricking irons. It's difficult to find these. Again, 3.38 stitch spacing. So same prong size, prong width distance. Let's have a look at the width. So 1.75, and on this one we are looking at exactly 2.5. Okay. So quite a bit of difference there. If I was going to stitch this into like a leather belt or something, I'd definitely go with the wider prongs because it has more space for thicker thread and more space for steeper angles between each stitch, if you know what I mean. So, you know, instead of them kind of a shallow angle, they're more like this. So it's really indicative of that kind of hand-stitched look, which I find particularly attractive. So if you're not using an awl, it matters. If you are using an awl, it just matters a lot less. So I hope that helps. Tamaz says, dear mister, could you please help me with a stitching problem? When I punch holes in the inside and outside of a bifold wallet separately, the holes will be facing the opposite direction. Is it possible to stitch it so that it looks nice from both sides? Yes. If you're... Good Lord, this talking is making my throat really tickly. Yes, there is a way of doing it. The technique would be no casting. And when so I'm casting this stitch, so you wouldn't do that. So you'd leave it uncasted. I am casting this. And when you pull, don't pull at these angles like you normally do, okay, like this, which is what I'm doing. You pull them straight out to the sides, 90 degrees in both directions, okay? No angles or anything like that. You pull them straight out. So no cast, pull it straight out. And although the prick marks are like this, they're opposing each other, you will get angles on both sides. And technically there is no face side. There's no front side and rear side. They are both front side. Okay, so that's the technique of doing it with an obverse pricking iron on both sides, and then you pair them up. So I hope that helps. So just a minor change to how you stitch. If you add a cast, you will get straight stitches on one side. And if you pull at angles, you will reduce the angles on one side, or possibly both. I can't remember which now. I did an experiment with that some time ago. Get some honey water. Yeah. I think the closest to honey water that I have in this workshop is probably marine varnish. Don't think I have anything remotely. No. I might have some ibuprofen or something. It's about the only food source that I have here. It's a bit like a bachelor pad. Just completely ill-equipped, except for very specific things. Would you recommend this technique, or is there another way to do it? Do you punch holes in the bifold wallets from one side? Yeah, I use a pricking iron as a pricking iron. I prick the surface. I don't go through with it. That's why I'm using an awl here to finish them off. I find wallets, you might get away with prick marking both sides and pairing them together, but then you're adding T-slots, and then you're adding reinforcements, and then this and that, and you're starting to make a really complex, create a process that's really high in complexity, and you're having to overthink things just to get around being good with an awl. For me, I prefer to learn the fundamentals of awl use to make it, to be accurate with it and have good rear side stitches, rather than having to creatively put thousands of needles in something to try and keep it aligned, to then stitch it and remove the needles as I go along. It's like trying to solve a problem that doesn't really exist, except you just need to practice a little bit more with the awl. Nobody's good with an awl from the get-go, but if you avoid it all the time, as you advance, you start to have to create really creative ways of getting around having to use one, to the point it's becoming more and more complex. But is there another solution? Yeah, it would be get reverse pricking irons, so that you can use obverse on one side, reverse on the other. And then when you match them up, they will be of the same angles instead of opposite. But trying to match these up would just be, but be impossible, because I'm doing a turned edge in my case. So, but yeah, see how many layers I'm actually stitching through. I've got a little prototype here of at the thickest. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 layers of leather and reinforcement. Can you imagine trying to line all that, like pre-prick them and line them all up? It's not impossible, I guess, but it depends on the design. But if you're having to compromise the design of something you're creating to get around the issue of aligning prick marks when you could just do it all in one go at the end, that's not a method that I would choose. But to each his own. Can you suggest a working DIY method to split leather strips? I'm on a budget and I don't want to buy a machine, and where I live there is no leather stores where they can split for me. Thank you. Split leather strips. I mean, I have done it by hand before, where I mean, there is a video of me doing this on Instagram. But look, any time you want a simpler, cheaper method, like simpler and cheaper goes down, your skill level has to come up and compensate. But if you're asking for a simple, quick, cheap, easy to do, anyone can, not that I know of, not reliably, but leather strips, I place them on the paring stone. From the rear end, I hold onto a tab and I slice through, pull back, slice through, pull back, slice through, and I can, within a few fractions of a millimeter, create a pretty good split. It takes practice to do, and you'll probably cut right through it the first few goes, but once you get a feel for it, it's more about pressing the flat side of the blade into the leather as you're cutting. So you're cutting forwards with the same level plane that the leather behind it is indicating for the skiving knife to follow on the flat side, if you know what I mean. It's kind of indexing against itself at that point. You're just kind of going by pressing down. Yes, it is possible, but it just requires a lot more skill, and you'll probably waste a lot of leather trying it in the first place. But it is a do-it-yourself method. Outside of getting a small leather splitter, I don't know if you can get one on eBay or something similar, maybe a used one. When I say leather splitting machine, I'm talking about kind of like this thing. I can't remember how much I paid for it, a couple of hundred maybe not even that. It's one a while ago. I don't like them very much. The ridiculous edge that you have to have on them in order for them to work requires a lot of time and effort, and yeah, you pay for it somehow. You always pay for it somehow. But the method that I was talking about with the skiving knife, you're not really going to work with anything wider than, say, an inch. I would also prefer to use a stitching awl, but I'm a beginner, which is the perfect time to use a stitching awl, by the way. Unfortunately, I don't have an awl that is flat yet. I will have to get one. Yeah, definitely. My first awl was a piece of wood that I whittled from a stick just to try out the method. I got a nail, I cut the head off, I drilled a hole in the stick, and I inserted it with a bit of glue in there. So I just got a nail sticking out a piece of wood. And then I used the hammer on the back anvil part of a vise to flatten it down. And then I just used a file to sharpen it, and then sandpaper, and then I polished it just for proof of concept. If I could do it with a piece of wood and a nail, just give it a go. Give it a go. Anything's possible. I think I kept it somewhere. It's hilarious. But I just wanted to see, like, is there something to this? Am I missing out on something? And I kind of liked using it, so I bought one. And the first awl I ever bought, I believe, was this one. Yeah. It's a Blanchard awl. It's my first awl, I believe. I think. And I bought it separately. It's cheaper if you insert the blade yourself. So I bought the thing separately. Yeah, so. Yeah, start practicing with an awl while you're a beginner, because once you start picking up habits and you start stitching without one, it's more difficult to integrate using an awl into your work when you're intermediate to advanced than it is as a beginner. You'll be all fingers and thumbs. It will look awful. It will be terrible. This is part of the process in order to get good. So you have to be, you have to be crap first in order to be okay. And you have to be okay first in order to be good. And you have to be good in order to be great. So you have to work your way through the stages and understand it's all part of the process. But start getting good at it now. The earlier, the better. Right, guys, I am done on here for now. I've got some more to film on the camera next, which is navigating this area on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to be coming through and stitching that and then going back onto the other side. But I have to film the process of teaching that right now. So that's what I am signing off to go and do. And then I'll be going along on the other side. Probably actually I'll switch to Instagram so that the guys on the gram can take a look too. So if you want to watch another one, if you have more questions today, in a little bit, I'll probably be, unless something comes up, probably going live on Instagram. So last question here. What problems do you usually face when someone starts using a flat awl for stitching? Will the line not be straight the first time? No, it will be all over the place. the rear side of your stitches will be going along and it'll be going down and that, it'll be all over the place. But that's normal. It's part of the process. I wouldn't practice all use on any serious projects using good leather. I would take all your scraps of leather and just practice marking the surface with your pricking iron, just 1 or 2 taps, that's it. Stitching through, okay, and then cut that off, make like a long strip 4 inches wide of firm vegetable tan leather, stitch the top of it with an awl, cut it off, mark a line, prick mark it, stitching again, and just keep doing that and cutting them off until you've got a whole handful of these little seams. And by the end of it, you're going to start to get a hand of it, because the difficulty is, as I'm stitching, I'm manipulating the needles and stitching through, and I'm then having to hold the needle with my fingers and then use the awl and then bring it back and then manipulate it back into play. I don't think about it because I've gone into the phase of unconscious competence. I can do it without thinking about it. But you will be in the stage of conscious incompetence, as in you'll be very much aware that it's very difficult to do and you're having to kind of manually take the needles and kind of move everything around, and it's going to be awkward. And some people even do this kind of thing. Just take your time with it. Realize that you're going to find it difficult. It's a challenge, but when you overcome that challenge, your leathercraft the whole world will open up to you. There'll be all sorts of things that you can't do just with a pricking iron alone, like thick handles, bag handles, case handles, box stitching, where you have to use an awl. And if you're at that point in your skill but you don't have the familiarity with this tool here, your work is going to suffer. So it's always a good idea, even if you don't end up using the awl that much, having the skill to use it will save you in many different scenarios. Okay, so that's it for now. I should be on the gram in a little bit, but in the meantime, thanks for watching, guys. And if you are brand new, okay, to Leathercraft and you want to see my hand stitching in a bit more detail, there's a free video on my website, leathercraftmasterclass.com. So if you go there, there'll be a pop-up where you can put your email in and I'll send it to you immediately. So it's a basic video on how to hand stitch with cameras on both sides, so you can see exactly how I'm doing it personally. Okay, so that's available right now on leathercraftmasterclass.com. Great for beginners, but also advanced who want to kind of just go over their skills again. All right, guys, thanks a lot, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.